The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. It is the Nerdcast News Report for Monday, February the 3rd, 2025. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We are back for another edition of all the nerdy news you need to know to get your week started. And this is very much going to be an Ohayocon heavy edition of the Nerdcast News Report. A lot of news coming out over the weekend, and we're going to be spending the majority of today's program trying to break that news down as best as we can for a couple of guys who are not attorneys, nor do we play one on television. We're going to be talking about that coming up on today's edition of the Nerdcast News Report. Joining me in studio this morning to get his week started is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, I probably should have went to law school. I kind of regret not doing that now, but it is what it is. Yeah, I think it's important as we go through this that a lot of this is going to be us just speculating because we certainly don't have the answers as far as the legal side of things, and I think even some of the details, we need more information, and I'm excited and kind of depressed, but excited to see this stuff come to light and find out what is real and what really happened throughout all this Ohayocon drama.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. It is kind of sad to see that this is where this whole thing has ended up, but unfortunately it does appear that at least going forward, a lot of this is going to be litigated in a court of law. Ohayocon was this weekend. That's important to note. There's their really kind of sad website that they're left with, which is relevant because it is one of the many items that is kind of in the lawsuit that was filed by CES, also known as CESI, against the Sekai Guild and Sekai Con. It was to kind of go through the timeline of what all happened, because I know there are a lot of people that may be joining us either live on twitch.tv/NerdcastEmpire or on the VOD that maybe are a little out of the loop on this whole thing. And to be honest with you, as we go through this, as Mike said, some of this is going to be, this is what we know, and some of this is going to be, this is what we're guessing, and we're hoping that over the next few months we'll get some more concrete answers to a lot of the questions we have and a lot of the questions you might have. But this all kind of started on Saturday afternoon as we were preparing for our Royal Rumble watch-along. You can certainly check that out on our Twitch page. We noticed, Mike specifically noticed, that the Facebook page that was what they called the dumpster fire group, which was basically a lot of the ex-Ohayocon people that are on the Coven side, on the Sekai Guild side, or just people who are sympathetic to their cause.
I think it's more people sympathetic to them. The group, I believe, began as just a cosplay group that were people that went to Ohayocon that did cosplay. I don't think they were necessarily...
We don't know that there weren't any of those people in there.
We can't really confirm either way on that. I don't think... Because, I mean... The big distinguishing factor between them is that when the Sekai Guild basically went radio silent on anything related to Ohayocon, this dumpster fire group kept going. So I think it's important to say there must be some separation between the two.
But at the same time, if it was simply a group that was outside of the scope of the Sekai Guild, they would not have been brought up in the lawsuit either, because anybody can run a Facebook group and say whatever they want. It's only important if there's some sort of actual tie to what is going on, because obviously it's not
that's probably another question we're going to have answered too, because I have to wonder if they just didn't catch strays because they were so negative toward Ohayocon. They're going to have that net kind of cast on them as well.
And there are certainly posts from that in the suit, so it does make you wonder. But and you can check out the lawsuit. It's filed in Hamilton County Court in Ohio, so you can actually go through and search it and look at all of it yourself. I didn't post it, and I won't post it in the chat because there are addresses for the defendants, and I think those should be redacted before that is posted. But anyway, getting back to where I was, noticed that Facebook page had been shut down, eventually rebranded. A lot of people booted out of that group on Saturday, and then the Discord for the Sekai Con got locked down as well. And that's when people started kind of rumoring that there was a lawsuit out there, and eventually, because the internet finds everything, there was information about the court case leaked, which allowed me to get online and find this information on the Hamilton County website. The case was filed in Hamilton County as the Cultural Exchange Society, the group behind Ohayocon, suing Sekai Guild, was filed on 1/16, so a couple weeks ago. Plaintiffs are listed as Melissa Ann Phelps and Emily DeJesus. On 1/31, which was Friday, a hearing was held seeking temporary restraining order against Sekai Guild in Hamilton County. The plaintiffs allege that in 2023, defendants jointly and severally, knowingly, and deliberately and maliciously attempted to extort Ms. Phelps into surrendering ownership and control of the convention by publicly defaming her to the niche market of persons who supported the convention's success since 2001. That is directly from the TRO that was listed, and it lists kind of the different things that they are being claimed on, and we'll kind of put that up on the screen, including digital assets by hacking them from CES's closed computer networks, stole corporate books and records, stole or destroyed physical assets, locked plaintiffs out from being able to access their computer networks, stole plaintiffs' Facebook, Instagram, Discord accounts, misappropriated copyrighted materials, trademarks, interfered with plaintiffs' existing and prospective business, and further defamed and doxed the two plaintiffs. And then, as you can see on the screen, this is basically the contents of the TRO. And the thing that's important to note about a temporary restraining order is it's almost always one-sided. It's typically the plaintiffs will go in and get the TRO issued, even though defendants were served or being in the process of being served. In most cases, this is just a judge saying, there's something here, I don't know exactly what it is, but by letting whatever action continue without putting a stop to it for the time being, there could be continued damages involved in the case. So the judge on Friday did issue a temporary restraining order, and really the big note of that was number 7 you see on the screen, 6 and 7 kind of tied together, that the defendants will immediately cease all activity on the Facebook, Instagram, Discord account in the name of Cultural Exchange Society, and return exclusive ownership, control, and all necessary information to the plaintiffs to log in, secure, and access the social media accounts identified in this order. And this is where you go from the what we know to what we don't know, and this is why, again, there will be a follow-up hearing on all of this coming up. And you see just the TRO continues, and we'll get to the text of the lawsuit in a moment. But, basically their claim is these were our accounts, and the Coven group basically locked us out of them. And Coven's argument, the Sekai Guild, is that you didn't start these accounts, specifically the Discord, but potentially even other social media accounts, and therefore you're not entitled to them. We just took them when we left because we started them, and we're going to keep them because they're ours. And that's where there's going to be gray area. That's where there needs to be proof. That's where, the biggest note I have out of all this is Sekai Guild hopefully will lawyer up in this whole thing, because as you go through the 48-page lawsuit, it's very extensive. It's clear that they have laid out their case in a pretty detailed way. They've clearly been building this case for a year. And whether you agree or disagree with the statements in the lawsuit, the fact is they have, at the very least, done a pretty good job of kind of laying out what their side of the story is. It's going to be very important for Sekai Guild to respond in kind. But I guess before we get to the actual lawsuit itself and get into some of the details there, kind of your thoughts up to this point.
I think what's wild when you first start reading it is my first thought is, oh my God, this Cultural Exchange Society came back from the dead.
Yeah, they were supposedly gone. That was one of the claims.
Claims made by representatives of Ohayocon, not Sekai Guild. That, when they installed this new convention director, we were told, and I don't know if that information's out there anymore because they delete so many comments, but we were told that was being dissolved. So to see it clearly totally active, which, I mean, we kind of knew that was the case based on filings that hadn't really been made to dissolve it. But, I thought that was kind of interesting. The social media accounts thing gets me. I think the Discord is the more interesting one, because it's my understanding that existed kind of in an unofficial capacity initially, run by the volunteers that would ultimately make up the Sekai Guild portion. The website, I feel like they, and I could be wrong, but I thought they kind of handed that back over relatively quickly. I don't know about the Instagram. I'd read comments suggesting that they'd never had control of the Instagram to begin with. The Facebook one's also kind of funny, too, because they came out with that Ohayocon 2025 Facebook group with this weird idea that they couldn't use the other Ohayocon Facebook, while seemingly at the same time, someone who was still very much with Ohayocon was using the original Ohayocon Facebook. So I don't know what that was about.
Yeah, and that's something we'll have to find out about. And the issue, as I mentioned in the Discord last night, with the website, and I think one of the things when you look at like what Sekai Guild has done, and if you want to, from an outsider standpoint, pick any holes in kind of what their process has been, one of the things that was pretty clear was the fact that it wasn't just that they kept control of the website, it was the fact that they deleted everything off of there and posted their manifesto, if you will, of everything that was going on, and was up there at least for a few days before it finally did come down. And then, of course, Ohayocon created a new website, which you saw on the screen a moment ago, not exactly a beacon of website design. That's neither here nor there, not really important to the case. No. But, that to me is the one thing, just on the surface, it's like, that was one you probably should have not done. Like, it's one thing, again, the Discord, the social media, the one things that maybe you could make a strong claim that these actually belong to you. Yeah. You could do that. The website, that's clearly been around for a long time.
You also wonder, too, that as these people are presumably all volunteers, what kind of documentation did they sign to basically... Because, like, if I look at my employment... I'm sure there are any number of things I signed along the way to suggest I wouldn't misuse anything, or I wouldn't kind of take it upon myself to. I mean, we have data retention policies. I legally can't go in and destroy a bunch of the work I've worked on, but I don't know how that pertains to something like an anime convention where you're working in a volunteer capacity.
Great point, because that does kind of take us to the next point. We start getting into the lawsuit, because that is one of the statements that is being argued with precedent. If you go into the lawsuit, it shows a case that basically ties this in, that basically states, it is an expectation that even if you don't directly sign something, that you are under the expectation that you won't misappropriate, that you won't misuse technology, all this type of stuff that you will typically sign when you start with a corporation. Sure. That, hey, you're not going to do this, you're not going to steal anything. At least the argument in the lawsuit is that there is precedent to show that even if you don't sign that, that is still an understandable expectation between the parties, and that you're still holding to that even if you haven't explicitly signed it. But, just getting into the lawsuit stuff there, and this is really the notable stuff. Number one, Ohayocon, and again, these are claims of Ohayocon in the lawsuit. This doesn't make them fact, but this is the best information we have. And obviously, they're going to have to back all this information up. So it's at least worth mentioning, because when this goes to trial, assuming it does, they're going to have to prove all this stuff. Number one is that they only had 4,000 attendees last year. They had not had in that neighborhood of attendees since 2005. When the first time we went in 2007, they were over 7,000 attendees. Would continue to climb up to above 10,000, 13,000. At one point, it was among or very close to one of the top 10 largest anime conventions in the nation. On page 32 of the complaint, it lists that the plaintiffs lost approximately $144,000 from the 2024 convention. Ms. Phelps is personally $10,000 out of pocket from the 2024 convention. And that's a great point. Megan Zakari, thank you for joining us in the chat. That is exactly something that I wish I had done at the time. Ohayocon did do 2 Zoom calls.
Yes, they did.
They were maligned. They were questionable.
It was really us having dinner with the conscience.
It was, even though he didn't have his camera on. But check out the Mega Zakari's page. Thank you for stopping by, because there's some really interesting stuff in there. We've talked about it on the podcast before about those Zoom calls and kind of how cursed they were, and clearly 2 people that either didn't know technology or claimed not to not record all of those. But I'm glad that that information is up, because I do feel like There's some important things in there. A lot of the claims that about Melissa stepping aside, about CESI going away, were all in those original Zoom calls that, like you said, clearly wasn't true because not only did she not go away, and not only did that organization not go away, but they're clearly involved in this litigation that's, obviously very serious. Getting back to that note, for convention to proceed at all, Mr. Jesus extended a loan in excess of $90,000 at 13% interest. That's a pretty high interest rate. So my guess is I assume that's what she's paying, and they just pass the interest on.
That is not the friends and family discount.
It is not. There is for those who are curious, because I'm involved with finance as well, there is an IRS website that gives you a guide on what to charge friends and family interest-wise, so that it actually is a legitimate loan and not a gift, which is taxed in a different way. So that's something to keep in mind if you give your family a bunch of money. It's usually a very low interest rate, but you are supposed to charge interest so that it's truly a loan and not a gift. There is also a forgiveness period and all this other stuff. We won't get into that. That's into the weeds. Wow. As of the filing of the verified complaint, there were only 300 registered attendees. That was 116, I believe, when that was filed. Plaintiffs estimate that fewer than 7,000 attendees will show up. Yeah, certainly were fewer than 7,000. We'll talk about that in a moment. I would assume that the number 7,000 must hold some sort of significance, whether that is their break-even point or that is a point that they are claiming to be a reasonable attendance based on the trend of the convention, the history of the convention, because otherwise...
It does seem like an odd number when you had 4,000 the year prior in a better venue, better city. A lot of the divisiveness that occurred between 2024 and 2025 hadn't occurred yet, so I don't know why your projection, unless it was some sort of significant figure, why it would be greater than 2024. So.
Well, especially when there's only 300 pre-reg at 116. That seems like an odd number to pull out of a hat. And like I said, I have to assume that's a break-even number, or like I said, what they're going to claim is, well, if this stuff hadn't happened, if Sekai Guild hadn't done this, and this, we should have had 7,000 people at our convention.
That way you can calculate your losses.
Correct. And they're projecting to lose an additional 133,000 from Ohayocon 2025. But it's just, and again, this is one side of the case, number one, and I want to make that clear. And that's the big thing about this lawsuit and the TRO is, and I say all this because as we've said from the get-go, even though we do have some sympathy and kind of have sympathized with the Sekai Guild people, we are trying to do this reporting as impartially as possible. We have tried really every step of the way to you try to think reasonably and say, well, here's this and here's that, and not just emotionally take. Because again, we went to Ohayocon for many years.
Yeah.
Generally had a good time. Really had no issue with the staff, other than until all this news came out about the way the staff was treated by.
Yeah, we didn't have any personal dealings with any of the people involved.
Correct.
We were very much just attendees. Our interaction with anyone of note at Ohayocon was probably just picking up our badge.
Yeah, for sure. So again, we have no skin in the game other than just kind of seeing what we see and kind of judging from there.
I think it's that objective mindset that's been big as far as us covering it, because when the news first broke, our first thought was, well, clearly there's two sides to this. You kind of lean toward the volunteers only because I don't know what they would have to gain from all of this and all the allegations that they levied and the stories that they told. There felt like there was so much more transparency in their story, whereas the other side, and this extends certainly from 2024 to 2025, they weren't giving you answers. They were removing comments. They were silencing criticism. I just, even if you wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I think we did fairly, even after that Zoom call, we were all ready to be like, okay, we'll give this guy a shake. We'll see what they can do. We'll see how things go moving forward. They suggested they would be having regular calls, answering questions. It really felt like a, hey, we're going to do this together kind of moment until it stopped feeling that way.
And if you go back and listen to our podcast, the first thing that was a little concerning about the call, and again, part of it is you and I have worked remotely for many years, you more so than I.
Yeah.
So, like, we kind of understand, like, kind of how Zoom calls work and all the technology behind it. Like, they had issues getting it archived. Like, thankfully, it appears we do have archives of those. The chair didn't put his camera on, claiming he was eating, but the associate chair did. So, like, he ended up kind of inadvertently becoming the face of this call, which was in some ways maybe a little unfair to him. It was just kind of a technological mess, and it's weird when you see people younger than you and you think you don't have the tech side down. Like, that's a little strange.
I managed this. Come on, guys.
Right, and again, part of it is because we use this technology all the time. So again, we've tried every step of the way to give the benefit of the doubt when there's been reason to give the benefit of the doubt. But again, a lot of the claims in those first Zoom calls have turned out not to be true. It was interesting that in that Zoom call, which was months ago, they said, "Hey, Mike Senator Nicholas is coming." And they didn't announce him until Thursday, Friday, like right at the very end.
They had his name listed in the guidebook for the convention, but they didn't even mention him until they posted his arrival with like 4 other guests, like the day of the convention. It was so strange. And again, you had 300 people pre-register. Like, Mike Senator Nicholas is the kind of guy that might drive additional pre-registrations. Why wouldn't you have mentioned him the moment you knew that he was going to have some presence there?
At the very least, like a month before. Yeah. Like, hey, he's going to be here. Even if you had doubt, like, because as we've talked about, he's a really busy guy involved in really high-level stuff. So you could have legitimately, again, benefit of the doubt, legitimately said, hey, maybe he just can't make it.
And maybe that's something that he requests. Like, hey, don't advertise me because, there's maybe a 45% chance I may have to cancel on you.
And that could be. Because we know he's been a last-minute guest at other cons in that same vein. So there could, again, benefit of the doubt, trying to be as impartial as possible. He is a great guest, and you should go see him. Maybe not at Ohayocon, but if he's at a con near you, definitely recommend seeing him. But just trying to get back to, we've tried to lay all this out kind of as impartially as possible, but it just, again, it seems like one side is constantly moving the bar and changing things and deleting things and restricting comments and trying to use guests to make people who have legitimate concerns seem unheard and possibly evil. And, that's not the way to go about it. And
that's the thing, too, is that they want to suggest that it was solely Sekai Guild's actions that led to their losses. But honestly, we had entertained the idea of going to Ohayocon still until some of the discourse on their own social media hit, and it kind of swayed your opinion where it's like, I don't really feel like, this feels too divisive for me to really want to support at this point.
And that's going to be, again, I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on television, but that's going to be one of the key linchpins in Sekai Guild's defense is you guys did this to yourself. Like, you are the ones, and there could be several things that you could claim. Maybe, they had the mask mandate an extra year after a lot of conventions, including Anime Midwest in Chicago, had dropped the mask mandate. So that could have hurt your attendance. Obviously, all the stuff online that, you kind of kept online that people wouldn't have known about otherwise if all this would have been kind of resolved, that, that is your issue. Moving the con to Dayton, there's all kinds of things that they can point to and say, you guys did this. We didn't have anything to do with this. Because, again, the Matsuri-Con defense, the convention not only continued after Matsuri-Con broke off, but it thrived. It grew. So
I honestly think what they needed to do from day one was say, we had some differences of opinion with this group of people. We're going to go our separate ways. We wish them the best. We're going to try to focus on improving what we're doing and kind of making sure that we don't run into the same problem again. There was never really that sense of, hey, we own some of this too. Maybe not all of it, but at least some of it.
And I think that would have gone a long way. In the neutrals, and again, I consider us to be very neutral in this. I think we are people that it's like if everybody would have just said, hey, we all agree to disagree. We have different visions of what this looked like. But we're going to let them do their thing, and we're going to do our thing, and everybody's just going to go about their thing, and we're going to move forward and put on a great convention and all this other stuff. Like, if that happens, then a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about for probably the next few months doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they had that mindset where they were going to own some of it, it probably doesn't get to this point with the Sekai Guild people. That a lot of them probably could have worked that out, because clearly those people knew what they were doing as far as running a convention. That them not being a part of that Ohayocon, clearly Ohayocon believes is very damaging to their brand. So they're kind of admitting that these people were really important, but not important enough to actually mend fences with them.
They're important. I just hate them.
Right. It does kind of feel that way.
Well, the other thing I wonder too, and we'll find out as this goes on, like, should they determine that Sekai Guild is liable for some of this, where do you draw the line? Because after the abysmal performance of Ohayocon 2024, any reasonable human, I believe, and this is just my opinion, wouldn't try to run a similarly set up convention in a worse venue thinking, hey, this time we're going to make money at it.
Correct.
Like, how is that Sekai Guild's fault that you keep trying to run conventions that don't break even?
And again, and because we're trying to be as impartial as possible, and we're trying our best to get in the mindset of the people that are involved in this without, again, actually knowing them. When you look at it from an Ohayocon standpoint, there can be no other conclusion, in my opinion, than this was kind of a Hail Mary convention. They clearly called in favors. They got the loan that's listed in the lawsuit. They needed a venue because clearly going back to Columbus, whether it was because of the size of the planned convention or because of potential debts owed, we're going to find all that out because all that stuff's going to come out in this lawsuit.
Yeah, that should be fun.
For whatever reason, they knew, like, hey, this con has to, if it's going to continue to live and we're going to make any of this money back, we're going to have to throw everything at this convention to try to make it happen. We're going to have to get a venue. Okay, Dayton, it's not ideal, but at least, the price is right. We're going to call in favors on all of our voice actor friends to bring them in. We're going to, basically try to rally what troops they have left. And again, how much of this could have been avoided if they would have just owned a little bit of this at the beginning and tried to mend fences? I don't know, but
or at least just shut up about the whole thing.
Yes, let it go.
With the Sekai people, they stopped talking about it. There was a point in their Discord where they're like, from now on, we're just not going to mention any of this. Like, we've moved on. No more talk of that convention. We're doing our own thing. Meanwhile, if the reports are accurate, you have closing ceremonies at Ohayocon this year making fun of the fact that people had issues with the prior Ohayocon. At some point, you either have to admit that you own some of that disaster, or just stop talking about it.
Yeah.
Don't make fun of the people. Don't mock the people who truly believe they have legitimate issues with you.
For sure. And, when the Sekai Guild kind of shut that talk down, there's part of you that's like, oh man, like I kind of hate that.
I was a little bummed because it was fun.
Yeah, but at the same time, somebody who, we always talk about you need an adult in the room. There was somebody on that website, or several somebodies, that were the adult in the room and said, look, nothing good comes of us continuing to talk about this. That maybe, I don't know, they could have had an inkling at that point that maybe they were going to get sued. So smart on them, because that probably saved their bacon from potentially a lot more than what ended up. And I do want to point out on the screen before we kind of get to the what's next, this is the timeline of what is next. There will be another hearing on the TRO coming up on February the 12th in the Hamilton County Courthouse. Jennifer L. Branch is the judge presiding over this, and then an initial case management hearing on April 9th. So, we're going to continue to get more details as it goes, because all this stuff really is public. You can go online, you can download the whole lawsuit, you can download the TRO. It's all there. So if you want to read it, if you just are bored on a Monday and want to go through 48 pages of a lawsuit, there's a lot of screenshots. There's a lot of claims. And the big thing is, they've listed precedents for things to try to say, hey, this is why we think this is the case. And that's why, Sekai Guild's going to have to basically do in kind. They're going to have to come in and really have a strong case built. We do want to kind of touch on the fact that Ohayocon 2025 did happen, and there was a post on the Dumpster Fire Ohio page that I wanted to just put up. This is one of the new Dumpster Fire pages that was created, although I would advise, if any of these Dumpster Fire pages are out there, that it might not be a bad idea to take any kind of reference to Ohayocon out of your title or description. I understand you're trying to get found, but I think everybody's probably found you at this point. Probably a good idea to just get that out of there to avoid somehow being tied in violation of the
and I know
TRO.
some have mentioned going private. in the near future, and I think that's definitely one step. But yeah, there's no reason to even have Ohayocon in your name.
Once once everybody's kind of found you, it's probably time to get that back out of there. But they're a really good review. I don't want to mention the person's name because I don't want to necessarily dox them. You can find out their name by going into the Dumpster Fire page. But it basically talks about just how empty it was, how the shuttle drivers, as we saw earlier this weekend, didn't really, the hotel didn't really know what to do with them. Sound like there were very inconsistent shuttle times, which is, I do want to point out because I have the experience of taking a shuttle at a convention when I went to Anime Expo in 2013. Now, obviously, Anime Expo is a convention that has their crap together, but they had buses that would travel all over the city to pick up their hotel blocks because they have so many hotel blocks. But it was on a time schedule. Like if it said the bus was going to be outside your hotel at 11:05, you look out the window and there it is. And then you would just basically hop on a bus with your number on it when you left the convention, and it would wait maybe 5 or 10 minutes for there to be a few people there, and then the bus would take off and drop you back off the hotel. It was very much like clockwork. Those people knew what they were doing. Clearly that wasn't the case necessarily here. Not necessarily the bus driver's fault, but clearly there was some miscommunication. Concessions, as I kind of expected would be, were an issue. Food trucks probably were great, but they weren't there all day. The con looking empty certainly wasn't great. And then, of course, as they mentioned, the Q&A on the last day, not great.
It must have felt like a live reenactment of the Zoom call.
Yeah.
Which would have been fun, actually.
Yes. Because, like I said, as you'll see if you go back and watch the Zoom call, it definitely, like we talked about at the time. And again, I try not to be too critical, but at the same time, like, I always said, like, if we ran an anime convention and we were in their position, I would have had a slide deck. I would have had details of here's what we're doing, here's who we are, here's what we're doing, here's when we're going to do it, here's when you can expect the next Zoom call. Like, I would have had the whole thing laid out. And then I remember one of them at one point, like, we should have made a PowerPoint or something. Yeah, you should have made a PowerPoint. Like, one, it keeps you on track, and two, it gives nice visual component to the audio of your Zoom call because
it makes you look prepared.
It does. It's like, hey, we actually planned to do this. It wasn't like a last minute thing where you just kind of throw it together. Again, it's just.
I also would have included either a video or a live statement from the owner of the convention, basically explaining why I felt the need to appoint new chairs to be the face of the convention. Like, if I felt like I had to do damage control and rebuild this thing, I would at least get on there and say, here's what happened. Things have been said on both sides. I think at this time it's best that I step away from any kind of managing role with this convention. I still own the convention. However, I think it's in its best interest that I hand the reins off to somebody else to help ensure that we have a positive experience for our volunteers and our guests and our attendees.
Again, it's really that simple. And but clearly that was never the intention. And so these two basically kind of had to be the face of it, both at the Zoom call and then again. And again, CESI was going away. It didn't go away. Melissa was stepping aside. Clearly not stepping aside. You don't get a giant loan to run a convention and then step aside. Like, if I'm taking out a $90,000 loan or whatever,
my money's on the line, my best friend's money's on the line, I should probably be pretty active in it.
100%. I mean, that's a logical thing. So, again, it's not so much. I mean, the biggest thing is like they said things they just could have just not said.
Yeah.
Like, again, like you said, the best thing they could have probably done is just not say anything and just put together a convention.
Well, I think that might have been part of why they thrived the way they did after the MatsuriCon issue, is that you didn't have this social media apparatus where you're just constantly reminded that there was this rift to begin with. They were much more able to just kind of ignore it and let it go away.
Yeah, because we didn't know about it for years. And we went to Ohayocon, like we mentioned, for the first time in 2007.
We didn't realize that was like that timeline's version of the 2024 Ohayocon, essentially.
Yeah,
the numbers didn't bear it, but again, I think that's because just that information wasn't all over the place. You weren't getting, you didn't have them telling you about it on their social media constantly.
Yeah, and again, that to me is one of the biggest, among many mistakes that the Ohayocon side made, is that honestly, silence would have been better than just this constant bickering, because again, the key is, it's kind of like the talk, and we don't talk politics on here, but it's kind of like they always say, like, to win an election, it's the middle ground. It's the people that are 5 to 10% either way. Those are the people that decide most elections. How do you sway those 5 or 10% that are either side? That's the way an anime convention is. Yeah, she's got her hardcore group that clearly showed up for this, but it's like, and there would probably be a hardcore group of people who are like, I'm never going to Ohayocon again.
A lot of moderates out there.
There are, and people just looking for a good time in a weekend where the weather turned out to be relatively nice for Ohio at the end of January and beginning of February. I mean, it's supposed to be 60-something degrees today. That's nuts. There were a lot of people that would just be like, well, I'll just drive up. Like, it would have been a chance to go to Izakaya. It would have been a chance to
check out the convention center.
Yeah, we've never been.
Much maligned and the discourse here. I've never been there. I'm kind of curious to see what it looks like.
But it's like every step of the way, something happened where it was just like, and our decision not to go, and I think this is important to state, and I wonder how many other people can say this, our decision not to go was 100% Ohayocon's fault.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with Sekai Guild or Sekai Con or any of that stuff, because, again, as you said, we had intended on going at least up for a day. We probably couldn't have done more than that just because of the schedule this weekend with the Royal Rumble, and I had a basketball game.
We had kind of intended to go to both and compare them.
Yes.
And we've been watching kind of the guest announcements. Obviously, Sekai Guild, now they're not announcing anything, obviously, but even up to this point, they had a few months to play with, so they weren't announcing things as quickly as kind of the last-minute Ohayocon super rush of guest announcements. But, we were kind of curious to see what each of them could bring as far as delivering a unique experience that maybe exceeded, not in volume, but it exceeded in experience what Ohayocon had turned into.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like, by all accounts, barring some sort of crazy court ruling that would make them be able to recoup a bunch of money, this has to be the last Ohayocon.
Yeah.
Like, if they're losing another $100,000+, they're already now also in debt by $90,000 plus, and that's the debt we know of that's in the suit. It doesn't list any other loans that the convention might have taken out, but it's very unlikely that the con would survive all of this. Like I said, barring just some crazy ruling where they were able to win judgment of the money that they're out, and whether the defendants would pay that money, because again, logically you would think they would just file bankruptcy and avoid having to pay that. But again, I encourage you to read the lawsuit. I encourage you to read the TRO. We'll do our best to stay on top of it as much as we can. There will certainly be more news, more reviews of the convention. We, of course, have Anime Wednesdays coming up on Wednesday. If there's anything new that comes about over the next couple of days, we'll be sure to mention that on Wednesday. And if breaking news happens, we can always run into the studio and jump online and do something live to kind of talk about it. But I would have never guessed it would have gotten to this point. My guess is the Sekai Guild people probably didn't think it would get to this point. But it is to this point now, and what happens from here is going to be very fascinating and could set some precedents for conventions that break off of other conventions and things like that. And it's it's an amazing it's amazing. I saw a post yesterday in one of the dumpster fire pages, like in a couple of years somebody's going to do a 3-hour video talking about the downfall of Ohayocon. I mean, we declared them dead sometime middle of last year when it didn't look like they were coming back. And then we were like, nope, they're alive. And now it's like, maybe not. So it's wild for sure. But again, we're going to do our best to report it as straight down the middle as we can, because again, we owe it to you all to do our best to try to bring as much of the facts as we can and speculate where it's logical to do so. But, it's definitely one of those stories that we're going to have to keep an eye on. And as we get more information, we'll pass it along, because I have a feeling, more information is going to come out. Maybe more people will reach out and kind of give us their side of the story. And we'll certainly...
The story's going nowhere.
It's not. Not for a while. Not while there's a pending court case, for sure. So we'll keep you all updated. But like I said, it's going to be definitely something that is going to it's going to be a big part of our programming probably for the next few months off and on. So that takes care of the news segment and almost the entire news podcast. It's time to get to the Empire Express, where we go through 5 quick stories that maybe are not Ohayocon related. Mike, you ready to go through this?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll take the odds. You'll take the evens. Gojira won the Grammy for Best Metal Performance for the song they played at the opening ceremonies. Mea culpa, Saida. We know they don't know metal, but what they do know, was that a good choice?
Yeah, it's their first win after 3 prior nominations. Easily justifiable choice. You have a metal band that's been around since 1996. They're making worldwide headlines as part of the Olympics opening ceremonies. Kind of makes it a slam dunk for the Recording Academy. According to WrestleOps, the clip of Ice Show Speed being speared by Braun Breaker has been viewed over 255 million times in 24 hours. Was WWE right in having him in the Rumble?
Absolutely. Like, that's going to get 1 billion views or more. And the dude, to his credit, pitched taking that spear, and kudos to him for actually, not taking the easy way out, jumped in there, got murdered, and is probably going to be even more over now. More artists have been announced for the Louder Than Life in Louisville, Kentucky this September. Who on the list would you like to see maybe first time or see again?
Yeah, so checking into it, looks like they're doing something similar to Sonic Temple with the daily unveilings. That being said, Acid Bath is currently the only overlapping band between Louder Than Life and Sonic Temple. Always up for seeing Slayer and Static X, but I'm looking forward to seeing who else gets announced.
Yeah, for sure.
WWE announced Clash in Paris to take place on August 31st, 2025. What is the next big international city where WWE will run a big show?
I think there's 2 that are really obvious, Mexico City being one, and Tokyo. I think the Tokyo Dome would be huge, and certainly if they can sell that out, would be kind of another shot across the bow at New Japan / AEW. Finally, WWE is bringing Evolve back on Wednesday night starting in March on Tubi. Predict what the overall viewership of AEW Dynamite will be by Labor Day.
You want to go for like the kind of clickbaity, like sensational answer of like 200,000. But honestly, where they are, I don't see a drastic drop between now and then. But it wouldn't surprise me to see 500K be the regular amount by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for them, they're going to get some more competition, and WWE is going to push that competition very heavily. It was a great wrestling weekend, and normally that's what we would probably have spent most of Monday on. But some other news jumped in the way, and hopefully we've done a good job trying to bring context to all of it and do our best to kind of let everybody know where it stands and where it's going to go. And again, I think we're going to hear a lot more about this as we go forward. So definitely one of those things that you're going to want to keep checking in with us from time to time. Again, we do the Nerdcast News Report on Mondays and Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Anime Wednesdays will be coming up Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Then, of course, Music Weekly. Check us out on Sundays at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. We just had a great Music Weekly last night. We'll have another great one this Sunday with the music of January the 24th coming up. Definitely encourage you to check that out. Big thanks to everyone who dropped in. Big thanks to Mega Zakari for dropping in with some knowledge. We really appreciate that. And again, as if people want to reach out, they can reach out on our Facebook page, Nerdcast Empire. Leave comments on our YouTube page. We're Nerdcast Empire. Let us know if you've got stuff to let us know. We're definitely interested in hearing about it and continue to report on this story over the next few months. That's going to wrap things up for the entire crew. For Mike, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.